Let's talk to Ben Habib, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Ben, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
We're cooking on gas this morning, Ben, because I'm getting a bit wound up about the water companies, for one thing. And also, I want to talk to you about this story in the Times about how we apparently are the world's centre for Sharia law. And everybody from America to Western Europe is coming here to get divorced from their 4 wives as if it's something normal. I mean, what the heck is going on?
It is peculiar how this has taken root in the United Kingdom. And I think we're pretty much on our own in Western countries to have Sharia law practiced so widely.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting to me in that article was that the Muslim communities in the United Kingdom have set up tribunals with rules and regulations for those tribunals. And if there is a dispute that's arbitrated through those tribunals, because of the rules that have been set in place, they can then go to a British High Court and get the British High Court to sanction the arbitration result.
Right.
So through the back door, Sharia law is capable of being enforced in the United Kingdom using the British judicial system, which is remarkable that you could have British law sanctioning Muslim law in the United Kingdom. Frankly, as I'm sure all listeners will agree with, and I know you will, Mike, there should only be one law in the United Kingdom, and it should be our law.
Well, exactly. And that's, you know, you have to ask the question again, how has this happened? Sort of because, once again, political correctness, no doubt, would have kicked in, and everybody knew, presumably, in the legal profession this was going on, and they didn't say anything about it. Because one of the things that they say in the Times investigation here, 100,000 Islamic marriages are believed to have been conducted in Britain, many of which are not officially registered with the civil authorities. So there are people who are claiming to be married in this country, and they're not.
I think the way it works is because we're prepared to accept cohabiting in the United Kingdom, where Muslims have more than one wife, they're just regarded as having, you know, being cohabiting.
Yeah.
And that there's no bigamy going on, which is against the law in the United Kingdom. Their marriages simply aren't recognised. And because the marriages aren't recognised, of course, those women also get no protection either on the way into marriage or on the way out of marriage. And it's a ridiculous situation. It has to be stopped.
Right.
If you're in the United Kingdom, you have to marry, and if you want any of the rights associated with being married, the protections that go with it, then you've got to marry under the British system.
And what would be the situation with any of those women? Say, for example, some guy has 4 wives, but they're not actually officially married, but under Sharia law they're married. What if he wants to claim benefits for them?
Well, presumably they can claim benefits on their own, you know, in their own capacity as an individual. But the other thing that's interesting here is that a lot of Muslim countries have actually banned the practice that we're allowing to continue in the United Kingdom. So, for example, because the Sharia law is being practiced within communities and not challenged by British law, if a man who's married to more than one woman under Sharia law wishes to divorce them, that woman has no protection.
Right.
He just has to say, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and that's it. She gets no asset, she gets no, you know, the normal protections that a spouse would get on the way out of a marriage. You know, it is genuinely an entirely balmy situation.
Yeah, it really is absolutely insane. Let's just go back to talking about water for a minute. Again, one of the problems in this country, it seems to me, is that we are governed by people who are sort of toothless in the face of what appears to be literally a licence to print money. You know, one, I don't understand why we pay so much for the water that we get, which falls freely from the sky and can be collected by any right-thinking individual. And now the regulator, once again, has said, oh, yeah, we're going to be putting prices up, in some cases, by between 40 and 60%. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think there are a couple of lessons here. The first is don't privatise monopolies.
Yeah.
If you think you can take a monopoly, which is essentially a water supplier is, privatise it and then somehow regulate it through Ofwat, which is, you know, a bunch of bureaucrats getting together and trying to hold to account entrepreneurs who've now got control of this monopoly, you're going to fail. A regulator putting in new rules, trying to identify what executives are doing in order to circumvent those rules is a bit like playing whack-a-mole. You know, every time you sort one problem out, the entrepreneurs find another way of making money. So I think at the heart of it is we shouldn't have privatized, monopoly businesses, and the same goes in, for rail and other equivalent businesses. But the other thing here is that actually we're surviving in this country on infrastructure that is decades, if not hundreds of years old. I know that the water supply system in London is Victorian, and we massive gratitude to the Victorians for what they did for London, but actually we should have continued to upgrade it. And as a result of these really old failing systems, where there's been no incentive to invest, because actually in the privatized sector, they just want to make as much profit as they can and pay out dividends and bonuses and so on, billions of gallons of water are leaked out of the system every year. Massive leaks. We need
billions a day, I think it is. Billions of litres a day.
Billions a day, yeah. Sorry. So we need a massive wholesale investment program in our infrastructure, and it doesn't just apply to water. We've been so bad on this. We don't think in the long term as a country. We think short term, and that's particularly the case with, privatised businesses.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the front page of the Telegraph as well. One of the biggest drug dealers in this country, who happens to be a Turkish crime boss, cannot be sent home after being released from prison because it would breach his human rights. I'm getting pretty sick of these stories. This one is worse than most. Apparently, he was jailed for 16 years for plotting to supply heroin across the United Kingdom, but he's won the right to remain here because to be sent home would breach his human rights to a family life, even though he's had several extramarital affairs around his wife back in Turkey. He visits Turkey on a regular basis. He says that it's dangerous for him to go back there, but it's clearly not dangerous for him to go back there on holiday. And these ridiculous immigration judges have said that it would be cruel to send him back. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I can't really add to what you said. It is incredible. Turkey is a NATO member state. If it's good enough to be a member of NATO, it's good enough for someone to go back there. He's obviously married someone in the United Kingdom and claims he can't take her back to Turkey with him, and therefore that would breach his human rights. But it's a really good example of how the European Convention of Human Rights is out of control. It is being applied in ways for which it was never intended. It was never intended that criminals would be given cover from being deported back to their home countries, which are perfectly safe, simply because they marry someone in the United Kingdom. That makes no sense.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, so, the argument for staying in the European Convention of Human Rights and subject to the European Court of Human Rights gets more tenuous by the day. And I think one of the best statistics that I quote on this, one of the most revealing statistics, is from 1959 when the court was set up, to 1995 when it was given supreme judicial authority. There was a revising of its rules, given supreme judicial authority over the countries that are members of it. In that period, there were about 850 adjudications by the European Court of Human Rights. Since 1995, there have been 23,500 adjudications. It's just ballooned. So the court has empowered itself, increasingly without any legislative authority. Remember, there are no parliaments anywhere in Europe making laws which are then passed to the European Court, and they're invited to enforce them. These are 18 conventions that go back to 1959 that are interpreted by the court as the court sees fit. And it has been over-interpreting these conventions increasingly. So, for example, in Switzerland, you'll recall last year, the Swiss government was held by the European Court of Human Rights to have been in breach of human rights because it wasn't doing enough towards climate change. Can you believe that?
I know.
The whole thing, the European Convention is madness.
It really is, absolutely out of control. But let's not forget the things going just as badly wrong here. Westminster City Council apparently is under fire today because they advertised massively subsidised housing in one of the most expensive areas in London in 5 different languages, right? They said they were making changes to make it fairer for people waiting for social housing. This is an exclusive story we've got here today. Westminster City Council offering a 2-bedroom council flat for £624 a month, which is a £30,000 taxpayer subsidy over a year. I think we've got a little clip we can show you. Hang on.
نقوم في بلدية ويستمنستر حاليا بتغيير طريقة عمل আমরা আপনার জানাতাম স্যার যে Westminster Council আমরা housing register system রে বদলাইতাম
Estamos cambiando la manera en que asignamos la vivienda social en Westminster.
Nous changeons la manière dont nous attribuons les logements sociaux à Westminster.
Marvellous. Any chance of one in English? No. No, I'm afraid not. I mean, what's going on?
Well, that just proves what you and I have discussed so many times in the past, that we now live in a country without an integrated culture, without society, because society requires an integrated culture. What we've got is multicultural silos, all operating independently, to the extent that members of those cultural silos don't even speak English, and they're having to be talked to by someone in their language, which of course in itself is a massive cost. But the other thing going on here, the two other things going on here, is progressive discrimination in favor of those minorities. As you say, English wasn't used. So that entire pitch was aimed at minority ethnicities in the United Kingdom, in Westminster, the most expensive borough, one of the most expensive boroughs in London. And so they're favouring minorities for housing in one of the most expensive boroughs, and they're doing it in their language, effectively turning their back on English-speaking British citizens.
Hard-working people, I mean, the average monthly rent in Westminster is £3,183 a month, right, which is an awful lot of money. They're offering a two-bedroom flat for 624 quid, and they've done this in Arabic, Bengali, Spanish and French, and they've said the council complies with the national criteria for allocating council homes to our local residents, prioritising those with the greatest need, blah, 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 blah. I mean, surely to God, if you want to come and live in this country and you want to access the services that this country has to offer, you might at least do us the courtesy of learning the bleeding language.
You might, but actually they're not obliged to, Mike. You know, they're encouraged to live in their own communities. The regulations of diversity, equity and inclusion celebrate their cultures. We're told as a country that actually we should welcome foreign cultures, that multiculturalism is diverse and it's good for us somehow. Actually, I think it's the antithesis of that. What we've got is division in our society, with lots of different people practicing different cultures, different religions, different languages, not communicating with each other. We're breaking the United Kingdom. That is what's going on here. And there couldn't be a better representation of it than the advertisement that Westminster Council put out yesterday.
I know.
And then suddenly took down, and then took down.
Yeah, I know, they took it down. I wonder why. They suddenly realised it looked a bit wrong. Ben, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you. Have a good Christmas if I don't speak to you before. Ben Habib, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK.